and we're recording. There's quite a few people on board. Thank you for coming. Like Tony said, we have a full agenda with some very interesting panels and discussion of the work we've been doing. So I don't want to hold us up. Rather than go around and do introductions, I'll do myself. I'm Tom Harrington. I'm support staff for the NJCRC, and I'm also at Monmouth University. And I'm joined by Laura Kerr, also support staff.
I'm at Stevens Institute of Technology and Coastal Resilience Specialist for New Jersey Sea Grant as well.
Right. And so if you would put your name and affiliation in the chat so we can capture who's here, and we'll get started. So with that, I'll hand it off to Tony McDonald, one of our three co-chairs. Tony?
Great. Thank you very much, Tom and Laura, for pulling this together, and everybody for joining us today. So there's always some noise things. I don't know whose noise that is. So maybe it's me. I hope not. So anyway, I will say I really want to welcome everybody again, particularly our guests today. I do think this is a pretty exciting time. Seems like every quarterly meeting we have, or every meeting we have, I see more new faces and more different types of communities. So I really like to see the collaborative growing with the diversity of representation. I also am very excited about what's going on right now, not only in terms of the funding opportunities that we'll hear a little bit about today, which really build it and they will come. We've been working on the resilience issues for a while, since Sandy. It's going to be 10 years next year, but I do think that some of the things we identified as needs 10 years ago, we're now seeing a lot of interest in actually stepping up to them from the community level up to the federal funding level, and certainly from the state. We'll hear today from some of their activities, and I think there's some things coming out, some newer news regarding the state's PAC rules and other activities that will keep us all on our toes. So again, I just wanted to thank everybody for being here, particularly thank Laura and Tom for organizing these calls and so many of the other meetings, and turn it over to them so we can hop right into the agenda itself.
Thank you, Tony. And so our first agenda topic is a panel on national funding streams that are being made available through a number of different legislative acts and budgeting items. And so we're joined today by three great panelists: Amanda Basso from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, Darlene Finch from NOAA, and Danielle McCulloch from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. If you are in ecological restoration and adaptation, you probably are, like me, overwhelmed by the amount of funding opportunities that are currently available. And so we've asked them each to provide a brief overview of what their agencies have out for funding and what their objectives are, so we can learn a little bit more about opportunities here in New Jersey. So with that, I'd like to invite Amanda to share her screen and kick us off.
Thanks, Tom. There she goes. So I did have the opportunity to speak at the Society for American Military Engineers New Jersey chapter. So it looks like some of the attendees there's a little bit of overlap, so this will look a little familiar, except that I'm going to go even faster. So, and some contact information has changed. So for those of you who've seen some of this before, here we go. So first, just a quick overview of the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. So I'm the Northeastern Regional Director. The National Fish and Wildlife Foundation is a nationwide nonprofit grant-making organization. There are a handful of foundations that are similar to us, but we're a little unusual in that we were created by Congress, but we are a nonprofit working foundation. We have a 30-member board appointed by the Secretary of Interior. It always includes the Director of the Fish and Wildlife Service and the Administrator of NOAA. So we have very close relationships with the federal family, but we are a private foundation, and we raise public and private money and re-grant it largely through competitive grant making. Our mission is, to sustain and restore and enhance fish and wildlife and the habitats they depend on, and we do that by pooling public and private resources Importantly, we fund implementation. We fund on-the-ground work, and we fund planning and design. And in some cases, we will fund some applied research that leads to on-the-ground implementation, but we do not fund advocacy, lobbying, litigation. We are a nonpartisan organization that funds on-the-ground work. We partner with just about every federal agency at this point that does any kind of on-the-ground conservation work, and it's a great community that we work with. We also work with a lot of corporate philanthropy, and then more and more frequently are actually partnering with other foundations as well to pull and leverage money and get it on the ground. Just some a quick snapshot, things that are important to know. We put about $300 million in grants on the ground in 2021. That was about 700 grants. We expect that number is probably going to be closer to 500 million in 2022, and that's we're conservative in our estimates. That's just what we know is coming, and there's always end of year activity. So lots of opportunity nationwide. You can see the dots on the map, and you will see that there are lots of dots in the map in New Jersey and the kind of the surrounding area. So very active in grant making in this region. In terms of how we invest, NJFF does have its own conservation framework where we have priority landscapes where we invest. So my region is Virginia to Maine and includes a landscape that we call Long Island and New England watersheds. Also the Delaware River watershed, Chesapeake Bay, and some others. The difference in colors there, the dark green is where we have a 10-year business plan that's been approved by our board, and then the gray ones are where we've got business plans in the process of being developed. So we actually are planning to take a business plan investment strategy to our board in November for Long Island and New England. But we have an active business plan for the Delaware River watershed. There's a little bit of gap where we do not have, coastal New Jersey is not really part of a landscape business plan at this point, but we invest pretty heavily in resilience in coastal New Jersey. So lots of information on this slide. It's just a snapshot of what we've got going on in New Jersey in terms of how the various programs that are delivering grants that implement coastal resilience. One thing I just want to point out is that for 2022, the deadlines have passed for all but one. So these are really great opportunities, and the timelines are generally the same from year to year. There's a little bit of they might be adjusted by a couple of weeks, but these timelines are probably going to be pretty good for next year. But the one that hasn't passed the deadline yet is a new program called the America the Beautiful Challenge, and so I will spend a little bit of time talking through that one, but I assume we'll distribute these slides so you have this information, but I strongly encourage you to check these programs out. The other thing I just wanted to call out is that I put on this the funding availability in 2021, or the amount that we awarded, and then what we expect to be available in 2022, and you can just see that the numbers are quite dramatically higher in 2022, and that is largely due to the bipartisan infrastructure law funding that NJFF is administering through some of our existing programs, and so we expect those higher levels to be sustained for the next 5 years, starting in 2022. So some really great opportunities. If you strongly encourage folks to get projects in the door for planning now, because we expect these sustained levels. And I will say NJFF has been a little bit nervous about the demand and whether folks would be able to meet match requirements and those kinds of things. And what we are seeing so far is that demand's kind of been through the roof. And so right now we are not demand limited, but I think that as the shovel ready projects kind of get cleared out of the system, we may start to be that we'll definitely want to be investing in more design projects so that we have plenty to fund in years 4 and 5 with these higher levels. Real quick, I think the Delaware Watershed Conservation Fund is a great program. It's a partnership largely with the Fish and Wildlife Service. We also have a partnership with the William Penn Foundation, very much focused on water quality, although those funds are in a transitionary period, so not sure the direction that piece is going. But the Fish and Wildlife Service partnership is robust and strong and growing rapidly. So strongly encourage folks who haven't looked at that program before to take a look. The program has grown so rapidly that NJFF has actually blown the goals that we set for ourselves kind of out of the water already. And so we're going to be revisiting those with our board and increasing many of the goals and potentially taking on new goals. But great program that funds a lot of coastal resilience in the Delaware River watershed, in the Bay proper, but also, you know, runoff reduction and other kinds of resilience activities, barrier removals for flood risk reduction upstream, as well as habitat improvement for fish and wildlife. Contact information has changed on this one. I got to go faster. So National Coastal Resilience Fund, I think this one is probably the one that is most familiar and that perhaps Darlene might be talking about. So I'm going to give it the least amount of attention, but it is the biggest dollars, and lots of response this year from New Jersey, especially from the Atlantic coast side of New Jersey to this program, and excited to see that work continue. This is the program that funds that intersection of resilience for human communities and natural ecosystems, so nature-based solutions. Again, 42 million in 2021, 140 million available in 2022. Really big increase, so a really good kind of sustained opportunity over the next 4 to 5 years. So the program doesn't fund design build typically, but will fund design, planning and conceptual design, preliminary design, final design, and permitting. We tend not to like to fund projects that aren't fully permitted yet for implementation because they can get hung up in permitting, which is probably not something I need to tell y'all. Long Island Sound Futures Fund, it exists. It doesn't fund in New Jersey, but I know some of you probably work outside of New Jersey, so just heads up, great opportunity. Lots of folks aren't aware how rapidly that program has been growing, so lots of funding available there. We expect to award about 10 million there this year. For a long time, it hung out in the $1 to $2 million range, and the grants were quite small, and you can see the individual grant size has actually bumped up considerably to up to 1.5 million. So great opportunity there. The new one, America the Beautiful Challenge, is a really exciting opportunity, and I strongly encourage folks to check out the website, watch the webinar if you haven't heard of this program. It's got some nuances this year. The idea here is to create kind of a one-stop shop for conservation with the federal family. There's different strings on the different pots of money right now, and so it's $85 million nationwide, great opportunity, but the biggest opportunity is for in this region is for tribes and states. A significant chunk of the funds has eligibility restricted to tribes and states, and so it's a really great opportunity for states. It's also a really great opportunity for folks to partner with their states, to partner with tribes. So encourage folks to check out this program. Rachel Dawson, who used to run our Delaware River program, is the program director, and she took Sid Godby, who was our Delaware River program manager, with her to run this national program. So y'all are sitting pretty in New Jersey because Rachel and Sid know you well. And we are backfilling Rachel's position right now for the Delaware River program and Sid's. Actually, Sid's is already backfilled. So this is the contact information. You'll see the director of the Delaware program is vacant, but we expect to fill that fairly quickly. Aaron Lewis is terrific and has been part of our team for a while. And then you can see the other contact information. If you don't know who to contact, you can always contact me, and I can hook folks up with the right people. But our email construct is firstname.lastname@njff.org. And I think that is all the time I have.
Thank you, Amanda. I'll invite Darlene to share her slides next. And I should mention, we'll have some time for questions at the end of the panel. And so if you'd like to ask any of the panelists a question, you can put it in the chat and we'll be sure to ask it. So put those questions in there. Darlene?
Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, I can't see my slides, which is a little disturbing, but I'll do this anyhow. Good morning. My name is Darlene Finch. I work for NOAA's Office for Coastal Management. I have a confession, which is I've been trading slides back and forth with colleagues in the Restoration Center. So there's a heavy emphasis on restoration in these slides. I'm not going to spend too much time on all the details. I'm just going to go over them pretty quickly. And then I'm going to spend a little time trying to give some suggestions on what I would encourage folks to think about as you think about applying and obtaining some of these funds from the infrastructure bill. I always also want to say it's really nice to see a lot of familiar names. So it's a great opportunity to be here. So NOAA, the infrastructure bill, was signed in November of 2021. It provides about $3 billion for NOAA over 5 years. That's a significant investment for habitat restoration, conservation, and resilience. And the word we use all the time is unprecedented. We really view this as an unprecedented opportunity to make a difference for fisheries, for threatened and endangered species, and for coastal communities across the country. I don't want to overwhelm you again, but if you have not checked out the guidebook to bipartisan infrastructure law for state, local, tribal, and territorial governments and other partners, you should. The link is at the top of this table. This is just a smattering of the funding that is available through it. This is not complete details, but it does classify all of these funding sources by agency, by name at least, and a general category of what they are. So there's a huge amount of funding here. I do also just want to flag, not looking for sympathy here, but I am suggesting it's an unprecedented amount of funding. And so it is really going to test the agencies in terms of tracking and reporting and making sure that we get information from people who apply and people who receive funding. I'm going to go to my next slide. So I'm going to start diving into the NOAA specific funding. For habitat restoration and resilience, there's $491 million over 5 years. That will be a competitive grant program. All of ours will be competitive grant programs for restoring marine, estuarine, coastal, or Great Lakes ecosystems, or using approaches that enhance community resilience to climate hazard. That is really building off. For some of you may be familiar with the community-based restoration program that really built off that experience and background. There's also $400 million over 5 years for fish passage. Again, it's a competitive program. Up to 15% of that is reserved for federally recognized tribes and Alaska Native corporations. Oh, sorry, skipped a slide. There's a bunch of additional funding that I want to flag for people. Most of this comes out of my office, which is the Office for Coastal Management. One is the National Oceans and Coastal Security Fund grant program. That's actually the funding for the National Coastal Resilience Fund. There is funding that we receive through our regular appropriations for that program. And there is also this funding that came in under the infrastructure bill titled Oceans and Coastal Security. So that's $492 million over 5 years. There's also funding for habitat restoration for coastal zone management programs. That's $207 million over 5 years. Now that funding is really, the only people who can apply for it are coastal management programs, but they can pass those funds through to others for implementation of projects. Similar vein, there's money in there for habitat restoration for the National Estuarine Research Reserves, $77 million over 5 years. Similar arrangement, it's the state or the managing entity, in your case, it's Rutgers University, can apply for the funds. They're the only ones who can apply, but the funds can be passed through. I also want to note that we receive some funding for regional ocean partnerships, interstate and intertribal coordination, and data sharing. That is really not money that's going to be used for restoration, but it is money to facilitate coordination across the mid-Atlantic states focused on shared priorities and ocean planning. I did want to spend more of my time just kind of flagging for you a couple things to keep in mind. Just in general, as you see this money come out the door. There we have been held up. We have been held up because there was a requirement that we submit spend plans to Congress, and Congress had to approve those spend plans and say, yes, now you're okay, you can go spend the funds. And we didn't get approval on those plans, at least in NOAA, until last week. So that has really slowed things down. And I know that's been huge frustration for people because they've been looking for funding opportunities and they haven't been out on the streets. But let me assure you, you will see a lot of them out in the next couple of months. Please make sure that the proposals address the Biden administration priorities. Those are really climate change, working with underserved communities, supporting tribal nations, ensuring that the benefits flow to disadvantaged areas. I see a number of other proposals. I've already started to see some and ideas. They're really not, they don't speak to those priorities, which makes it a whole lot harder to compete in this arena. I do just want to warn folks, we are scrambling as hard as we can, but the magnitude of the funding is testing the limits of the agencies. So we're trying as best we can to get it out quickly, but understand it's going to be a challenge. So be patient with us, but work with us on trying to make this happen. And I do want to reassure folks that federal agencies really want to do well. I mean, I'm going to go back to that word unprecedented. We really care. We really think this is a significant opportunity, but our hands are a little tied. So we are looking for feedback as we go through this process. We know that the first year is not going to be perfect. We know that there will be things that we probably should do differently, and we will be looking for feedback on that. So many of these, at least the NOAA funding, will ask for pre-proposals. That's an opportunity for us both to screen through the ideas that are being submitted. And it's a really good opportunity to figure out if the idea that you're putting forth has traction, fits the funding stream or not. And then you actually, if it meets a number of criteria, then we would invite you to submit a full proposal. Really encourage folks, because this is infrastructure funding, to look at making a difference on the ground. If that's not possible in the first year, at least be on a trajectory for making sure that you're going to make a difference, because that's critical. Make sure that whatever projects you're putting forward are considered a priority by others, and get letters of support from them. That, whether it's the collaborative, whether it is a community, whether it is tribes. I know you don't have any federally recognized tribes in New Jersey, but if there are partners who are seriously engaged with this effort, please make sure that that's reflected in what you're putting forth in your application. It's really helpful. There's a lot of emphasis on strong partnerships, understanding how all these pieces fit. We understand that there are lots of different projects that eventually may weave together, but understanding how that project is connected to other effort and that it's been prioritized by other efforts is really important for us. We'll be looking for identifications of where this project is prioritized. It's okay. We understand that there are a lot of different funding streams out there. It's okay to try to braid all of them together, but just be upfront about that in the proposal. Just make sure that you identify that and say, we're looking for funding in these other places to complement this project as well. I realize that if we made this a little more complicated, then I'm not going to say that it should be, then makes it more complicated for applicants, but just share whatever information you can about what other funding streams. Funding, in most cases, at least for our funding, match is not required. It helps, it doesn't hurt. It's a definite opportunity to demonstrate that you got other people who are willing to invest time and energy in your project, but in many of these cases, the match requirement has been waived. The other thing is, I'm going to echo a theme that I think I heard from Amanda, which was start building towards subsequent years of funding. It is a 5-year funding horizon. We don't often see that kind of opportunity. It's a real chance to start investing in a project, plan it out over a 5-year time frame, and take advantage of funding down the road. So I think I went really fast. I think I went so fast that I made up for anybody else that's going to run over. So thank you. Thank you for your time this morning. If you have questions, would like suggestions, if you already have relationships within NOAA's Office for Coastal Management, within NOAA's Office for Habitat Conservation, and you're confused about some of these funding streams, I encourage you to reach out to your contacts. If not, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to connect you to my colleagues in these other offices to try to sort through it a little bit. So thank you. That's all I got.
Thank you, Darlene. A lot of good advice there. Thanks. Okay, we'll move on to our last panelist, Danielle McCullough.
Hey everyone, so good to see everyone. Can you see the screen, Tom?
Yes, I can see the screen.
Great. I'm Danielle McCullough with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services Coastal Program, and I'm going to talk to you about some of our funding and resources for your coastal resilience projects. We are a little bit different in that we have restoration programs as well as grant programs. So I'm going to first talk about our restoration programs where we can help partner with you, help you access some of this federal funding that we're talking about today, and then talk about our specific federal funds. So the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service works with others, we partner with others to protect, enhance fish and wildlife plants and their habitats. And the key here is it's for the continuing benefit of American people. But our big conservation priorities include coastal resilience, recovery for at-risk species, and aquatic connectivity, restoring natural hydrology. People think about a lot of different programs when they think about U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, but in the state of New Jersey, I think a lot of people think of us from the regulatory side. I'm not regulatory, I'm restoration, so that's what I'm going to focus on today. So I work in our coastal program. For the state of New Jersey, your coastal program office is the Delaware Bay Coastal Program Office. We work throughout Delaware Bay, but also up the coast of New Jersey. And our top priorities for the state include coastal resilience and shoreline habitats, Delaware Bay shorebird recovery, and then restoration of our salt marshes, which are really important to our state. We have a suite of resources. One great thing that our program does is we partner and provide technical assistance. So we do everything from the beginning of a project, forming a large interdisciplinary partnership, to locating funding for you, helping you access that federal funding or that state funding. Because we're a federal agency, we cannot accept federal funding. We're just increasing your capacity to do so. We also have baseline data equipment that we can help you collect baseline data to inform your designs, make you more competitive for those funding sources. We can help put together permitting docs, do some of the intra-service Section 7 work on our end for our office. And then we also provide that on-the-ground support and materials for actual construction of coastal resilience projects. The types of projects that we work on in the area include shoreline protection using nature-based features. We're really interested in implementing more novel features and then wrapping robust monitoring around that so we can effectively protect our shoreline habitats. We also do beach restoration and protection where it has a habitat or ecological uplift. A lot of marsh restoration work is really ramping up in the state, and we really want to help advance that work. And we do that through edge stabilization, ditch remediation, and also hydrology improvements. And we don't actually implement beneficial use of dredge material projects, but we want to support that work. And we're really interested in helping monitor and research that work and helping our partners implement those types of projects. And I really want to emphasize the monitoring and research aspect of our program, because that's how we can measure success and really become effective in our tactics for achieving coastal resilience. And that's what makes our program a little unique. We can also work on any type of land. We can work on federal lands, refuges, state lands, municipal lands, private lands. We don't have borders to restrict where we help out projects. Another restoration program in the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services office is the Partners for Fish and Wildlife program. And this program is a little bit different. They don't do monitoring, but they do focus on the ground implementation of restoration work. And they work on private lands, they work with landowners and also local municipalities. And types of projects that they get involved in include pollinator projects. They really want to facilitate coastal habitat migration, wetland restoration, dam removals, things like that. And they have a lot of resources that they can lend to on-the-ground implementation of projects, including a suite of heavy equipment, materials. They have a whole greenhouse full of plants. and they can assist you technically with permits, planning, and funding. And this is my good friend, Mark Virgilio. If you're interested in partnering on a Partners for Fish and Wildlife project, you can contact him. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about our funding streams. Amanda touched on the Delaware Watershed Conservation Fund, so I'll breeze through that. But that's part of the Delaware River Program, which has 2 competitive funding streams. The RFP for this year was already released and proposals were already due, but it'd be a good idea to start planning for next year if you're interested in this funding. And it awards up to $1.5 million per project for projects within the entire watershed. And if your project has a at-risk species benefit, especially for species listed here on the right, then you're going to be a little bit more competitive. And this past year, they did set aside $4.5 million just for nature-based infrastructure projects. So I anticipate that that might be a theme for next year as well. If you're interested in partnering for this, our coastal program office works closely with this program to make sure that our priorities are being implemented through this funding stream. So feel free to reach out. And then we also have wetland conservation grants. And I'm excited to bring these up today because I don't know if we're going to talk about it today, but the state has recently released the New Jersey Natural Climate Solutions Grant funding, which is an awesome opportunity to make up that one-to-one match. So NOAA's funding resources don't require match, but a lot of these U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service funding resources do. But I see a lot of opportunity partnering with that state funding and using that to leverage these wetland conservation grants. So these are for the conservation of wetland habitats. You can get up to $1 million awarded. It is focused and supposed to be funneled through state agencies, but our hope is that we could create like a large partnership with the state so that they don't have the burden of implementing projects, but they could increase capacity by partnering with different agencies to use that funding to implement on the ground conservation work for wetlands. There is a land acquisition aspect to this funding source that only requires a 25% match. The other one is what people call NACA. It's the North American Wetlands Conservation Act funding. And this is specific to wetland habitats that are going to enhance migratory birds. This is also up to $1 million funneled through state agencies. But this funding source is really flexible. We typically work one-on-one with applicants, so it's not super competitive because if you're putting in the work to create a proposal, you're likely to get funded. And that $1 million is a rough estimate. I think there's some wiggle room there too. And match can be from the state or partners working on the project. Another opportunity to leverage that RGGI funding with the state. So if you have any questions on any of these resources that we have, I can either provide a better contact or try to answer questions myself. Feel free to contact me. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Danielle. So we have time for a couple questions. If you want to put it in the chat or raise your hand. There were a number that came in as the panelists were speaking, and I believe our panelists have answered almost all of them. So thank you, panelists, for answering. If you didn't see an answer to your question, please raise your hand and we'll get you now. Any questions? So I saw that there were a couple questions about match, and I know, Amanda, the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation had changed their requirements this year. Does that hold too for the America the Beautiful funding?
It is a little tricky. Right now it is, there are different match requirements for the different pots of money. And I think the short answer to your question is, if match is a barrier, reach out to someone at NJDEP and we will help you figure it out. We do not want match to be a barrier to anyone applying for these funds, and especially tribal organizations. We'll figure it out. There are match requirements. In some cases, NJDEP has some private money and we are able to offset some of those match requirements. So they're not large, They're smaller than normal. And I will say across the boards, NIFF has tried to lean toward encouraged but not required to the extent we can on pretty much all of the programs this year. And never let match be a barrier. Sometimes folks don't have match that they're not thinking about. So that's the short answer. Sorry. It's kind of a long, short answer.
Thanks. Any other questions before we close out the panel?
I have a quick question for Darlene, if she doesn't mind. I know that NOAA has habitat restoration programs also. Do they couple or partner on projects that you're funding through your funding streams? How does that work?
So are you talking about the IIJA money, or are you talking about just their overall habitat efforts?
Yeah, your habitat restoration programs and how they partner on your different funding streams.
Well, I guess I have to say that I feel like we have a really strong partnership with the Office of Habitat Conservation. The Restoration Center and our habitat conservation staff are within that office. And we're incredibly collaborative on these projects. In fact, like for the National Coastal Resilience Fund, we often rely on those staff who are on the ground, who have a much better understanding of these projects. I often see them coming through the permit review process. So I would not say that that is seamless, but I would say that we rely on that expertise to inform our own decisions on this. And we have been walking really closely with them, particularly on this new funding, to make sure that we're not contradicting each other and trying to make sure that if a proposal comes in for our funding stream and it makes more sense for the habitat conservation funding stream, we'll direct people there. So again, I mean, if you see confusion between that, we're trying to address those situations because we understand that there's overlap. That help?
Yeah, thank you, Darlene. I don't think there's confusion. I was just curious about how the two work together. Thank you.
Yeah, and it isn't perfect, but it's a strong alignment we have.
Tony?
I don't want to answer a question from Tony. I'm going to go away. If Tony's asking a question,
it is kind of an existential. It is an existential question. So you're right to be.
Oh no, I don't do those.
Because I do think, and this is kind of exciting, and thank you all very, very, very much. But I do see, you know, we in the collaborative really are trying to work from the community level up to sort of make sure we can make these connections. And one of the things that I think might be an interesting transition, just general comments, as we switch from what I call the habitat conservation objectives, which have been kind of at the core of a lot of your programs, certainly Fish and Wildlife, and to resilience and how these fit into a community resilience strategy. I just wonder if it's a little existential, how you see, you know, the switch to the focus on resilience projects as an element of these projects impacting your programs. And it's just something that we want to convey accurately to the communities in terms of looking at their projects.
Tony, I can answer a little bit. I would say that community resilience is a huge factor in a lot of our habitat restoration work. We want to make sure that the marshes that we are uplifting and restoring have a benefit for the communities that live behind them, or the beaches that we're, you know, nourishing or helping protect, that the community adjacent to it is reaping the benefits of that. And so our living shorelines work, all of that, like we definitely want to make sure that we're connecting with communities and making sure that they realize that our habitat restoration goals are also community resilience goals too.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
And I would say, I mean, I think Amanda would say this as well. That's a huge priority for NCRF as well. I mean, we are also looking to marry those, how do I want to say, those planning efforts, because they haven't always integrated really well. You kind of had a stream of habitat restoration and a stream of resilience, and being able to figure out how to marry those two together is really helpful. I would say it'd be really, to the extent that we can come, people who are applying can come in and say, this is really, we have looked at this as the state of New Jersey, or we have looked at this as a county and determined that this is the best alignment of these to benefit both habitat restoration and community resilience. And these are our priority. That makes it much easier for us.
Right. Yeah, I appreciate it. I think that's what I'm trying to get to, aligning that for community, because there are different sectors of the communities who have typically dealt with these projects. So trying to think about it as in a broader resilience context, and habitat is something that we want to continue to focus on in New Jersey. Thank you.
Well, I would like to thank all the panelists for participating and wonderful presentations. And we will post the recording and the slides on the NJCRC website so you can access them. So thank you very much. We really appreciate the information. Okay, next on the agenda, we have some updates. The first being from the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. And Becky Hill is going to discuss the climate resilience work that the state's doing. Becky?
Hi, thanks, Tom. Okay, so let me just, it says I can't share my screen. Let me try now.
Now you should be able to.
All right, great, thank you. Okay. All right, hi everyone. My name is Becky Hill, as Tom said. I'm going to be talking to you about some of the climate resilience planning efforts that are going on at DEP. I'm also here with Megan Levy. We're both in the Bureau of Climate Resilience Planning, and we sit under the Chief Resilience Officer, Nick Engerone, who apologizes for not being able to be here today, but we'll still be able to give you an update of what we're doing. All right, so one of the core roles of the Chief Resilience Officer is to coordinate implementation of the statewide climate change resilience strategy, which was released last October. And we generally think of this coordination occurring in three key ways. So coordination of state agencies is occurring through the Interagency Council on Climate Resilience, which was established by Governor Murphy's Executive Order 89. And the council is currently made up of 22 state departments and agencies that we are working really closely with. DEP is one of these agencies. And it's chaired by Jane Cohen, who is the Executive Director of the Governor's Office of Climate Action and Green Economy. And then Nick, as the Chief Resilience Officer, serves as Vice Chair. The council developed and released the resilience strategy and is now initiating development of 22 agency-specific resilience action plans, each of which will talk about how that individual agency is incorporating resilience into its policies and programs, funding opportunities, things like that, regulations. And this includes DEP. So we've been developing a department-wide climate action plan, which lays out some of the changes that DEP is planning on making to its policies and programs on all things climate, not just resilience. One key aspect of that is looking at our regulations, planning, acquisition programs, and looking at ways to coordinate all of the responses that are occurring to climate impacts within each of those programs. So the process that all the agencies are going to undertake to develop their agency-specific action plans is still being finalized, but what we do know is there will be some level of stakeholder involvement. So hopefully we'll be able to provide you an update on that sooner than later. And then finally, the third aspect of how we see this coordination occurring is through community guidance and assistance. And this is mostly what Megan and I are going to focus on for the remainder of our presentation. So we are doing a lot and do have a lot of efforts underway to support climate resilience planning at the community level. You're going to hear more about the Resilient NJ planning projects, the Municipal Assistance Grant Program, the Resilience Accelerator, and DEP's planning toolkit from Megan. I'm going to give you an overview of the Resilience Gap Initiative, but before I do so, just one, a little bit of administrative update for everyone. Not sure how much, if any of you have heard Nick present on this in the past months, but Blue Acres now resides under the Chief Resilience Officer. So the current Blue Acres program is currently being, visioned out over the next few years and how that could take a more proactive look at how that program works and how acquisitions can occur across the state. So stay tuned to hear more about how exactly that's going to work going forward. So as you all know, as you've heard about some today, and then there's a lot of state efforts that all of you are undertaking, there are a variety of tools and trainings that provide technical assistance, planning assistance, resources, et cetera, to towns who are looking to do resilience planning. All of these are really great opportunities for local governments, but we want to really ensure that all of these programs are offering the same high quality, consistent guidance. And we are aware that funding is not always going to be available to provide the level of assistance needed to help every interested town. So for these reasons, we think it's really critical to develop guidance and support for municipalities to help them look to becoming more self-sufficient when it comes to climate resilience planning. So how can we support that? I mean, we can't provide the direct technical assistance all the time or funding all the time. What other resources are needed? What else can we as the state do to help support that effort? So we've termed this initiative the Resilience Guidance and Assistance Program, or Resilience Gap Initiative. The idea here is that we'll partner with federal and state agencies and our academic and NGO partners to develop and design and then develop comprehensive package of guidance, tools, and trainings that municipal governments and their staff and officials can use, and then look in the future to develop a more comprehensive technical assistance program. So this tour, the idea is that the coordination will help avoid duplication of efforts, and that way we all know we're going to be using our time and resources as best as we can. So it's an evolving project. We haven't formally kicked it off yet. We're still in the process of discussing with FEMA how exactly this coordination could occur, but you can expect that the end result would bring updates to our planning toolkit that you'll hear more about from Megan, or incorporate latest requirements and best practices into programs like Sustainable Jersey Certification Program, and even those more comprehensive technical assistance programs. So before I turn it over to Megan, I do want to make one plug for everyone on the call. So in an effort to help better communicate all of the really complicated impacts that everyone will see from climate change, we have a community-based art grant program in partnership with the New Jersey State Council on the Arts. And we have a round of funding currently available. Applications are due at the beginning of July, but we provide funding to community-based organizations that then are partnered with artists through the Arts Council. And we've resulted in some really great projects and some community events around those projects. So check out our website. If you look on DEP's website for the art program, you'll find it. If not, reach out and I can give you information. But if you know of anyone in any organizations in your regions, please let them know this is available. And now I'm going to turn it over to Megan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Megan Levy. For some of you who haven't met me yet, I'm new to the Bureau of Climate Resilience Planning, working with Becky and Nick Angarone. So I have a couple of slides just to kind of do an update on the Resilient New Jersey program that we have and the regional plans and a few other things. So most of you are probably pretty familiar with the Resilient New Jersey. It was launched in 2020. And basically, it was put together to provide planning assistance to the regions around New Jersey, focusing primarily on coastal and inland flooding through public engagement. And Becky's going to help me out and move my slides. Thank you. So we have basically four core solutions that we're looking at. We're looking at providing science and data, supporting engagement with the public, assessing vulnerability, and identifying solutions. So we're looking to reach underserved populations and ensure representation and participation from socially vulnerable populations and co-develop equitable solutions. It's very important that we also identify projects that enhance the value and integrity ecologically, recreationally, and for economic resources. Next, please. So we have four multi-municipal regions right now that we're focusing on: Northeastern New Jersey, which consists of Jersey City, Newark, Hoboken, and Bayonne, the Raritan River Bay communities of Woodbridge, Perth Amboy, Sayreville, Old Bridge, Carteret, and Amboy, Long Beach Island, which contains all of the towns on the island, Long Beach Township, Beach Haven, Ship Bottom, Surf City, Harvey Cedars, and Barnegat Light, and also the Atlantic County coastal region of Ventnor, Margate, Longport, Atlantic City, Brigantine, Pleasantville, and Northfield. It's our hope that these projects will provide needed resources and put these needed resources in the hands of these vulnerable regions and increase the public understanding of threats posed by climate change. Next, please. So this has been our regional planning process. You can see we started out with the consultant teams and regional teams with a planning context report back in November of 2020. And over the last 2 years, they've been maneuvering through different tasks and creating reports and very important other pieces of information to help the towns get through to where they're currently sitting which is looking at the action plans. All 4 regions are currently working on creating preferred scenarios for each of their communities and also creating the action plans for implementation by a mid-summer deadline in July. In addition to this first full phase, there's a second phase of the program which puts funds towards implementation and prioritizing these planning actions. And that is also coming due in the middle of the summer. Next, please. Another program that we've just kicked off is the Municipal Assistance Program. We're directing resilience planning assistance to individual municipalities in this program. There are 5 teams that are working with these municipalities to develop MLUL required vulnerability assessments. So we have Ocean Township, Salem, Stafford Township, Trenton, and Upper Township. Well, the wonderful thing about this program, it just kicked off. We've met with all of the teams, and our office has met with the teams, and they are also either kicking off their communities currently or just about to kick off with their communities. And everyone's very excited about these projects moving forward. Next, please. So here's my plug for the toolkit. Most of you may know as well that the toolkit is available. The local planning toolkit for climate change is basically still in the same format as it has been, to create a toolkit that offers resources to municipalities to be able to undertake their own planning efforts, and also any organization that may be helping a municipality to undertake that, whether it's a planning firm, an engineering firm, an NGO. We're hoping to populate the toolkit with as many resources as possible and update it frequently. Next, please. So just in case we don't know if you're included in this kit in this group, we just came up with an idea of who we would like to use this toolkit. Like I said, anyone on municipal and community staff, towns going through plan endorsement. Please use it if you're looking at working through vulnerability assessments from the new changes in the MLUL. But also it's a great opportunity for citizens to just increase their information and knowledge about climate change, and maybe be able to come in as an informed citizen into their meetings so they can speak to their towns about their interests and also what their concerns may be. Next one, please. And this is my last slide. Just a plug for the New Jersey Resilience Accelerator program, which we're working with FEMA on. It's a program to equip local communities with tools to reduce risk from climate change and natural hazards. We have a current cohort participating, mostly consisting of riverine communities. There's 7 of them, I believe. Most have been, they were very much affected by Hurricane Ida. And so we've been working in conjunction with FEMA and some of our other partners like NJOEM to work and create this program that prioritizes and implements the driven risk reduction strategies. It's very important to help collaborate with the local, state, and regional partners, reduce that risk, and also understand economic trade-offs for mitigation actions. We've been working with them in some stakeholder engagement opportunities. We've had 2 of the 3 planned workshops that have taken place to date, and they've been very successful so far, and I'm hoping the towns are finding them very useful. And then likely after the 3rd workshop with this cohort is finalized and completed, a new cohort of towns will likely start there in the late summer or early fall. And that's it.
So here's our contact information. If you do have questions or want more information on any of this work, please reach out.
Great. Thank you, Becky and Megan. Really some great progress over the last year. I think we can move on. We're a little bit behind in the agenda, so if anybody does have any questions they'd like to ask Becky or Megan, maybe put them in the chat and we'll make sure they can see them and answer them. So thank you very much. So our next update is from the New Jersey Association of Floodplain Managers. Eliza Cummings is joining us from overseas, I think, to provide an update.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good. So New Jersey Association for Floodplain Management holds a conference in October. This year it's October 25th through the 27th at the Hard Rock in Atlantic City. And we have voted to give NJCRC a complimentary table at the conference so that you can have an event and market and use as you see fit. So while we've given you the table, we do ask that you register for the conference. So if you have members of CRC or your affiliated groups that are willing to help man the table, please feel free to solicit and sign them up for such activity. It is a great conference. It offers a number of continuing education credits, 12 for floodplain management, 12 for New Jersey PEs. Usually we're not qualified yet. We have to have our syllabus in order, but usually we get 3 to 5 credits for New York PEs and 1.5 credits for construction officials as well. And we've also voted to give a uniform membership to NJCRC, so you can register as a member, a group member with NJAFM, and it will give you access to all of our webinars, which are usually on Friday afternoons, depending on the ability of the presenter. They also usually give you a credit, at least for floodplain management, usually also for a PE credit, and they are free.
Well, thank you very much for both of your generous gifts to us. Actually, it's great to be able to come present at the meeting. I know many of us attend that meeting. It's really a very, very good meeting, and having access to the webinars is. Thank you very much. That's a great opportunity for everybody.
No, we're happy to work together with you.
Great, and I think well, Laura and I will probably send out an email, but we'll probably post the access through the Basecamp page we have, if that's okay. Yes. So if any of our partners doesn't have access to Basecamp, please let us know so we can get you on there and you can take advantage of these opportunities. So, and we'll see you in October, not sooner. So, okay, so next on our agenda are updates from the CRC work groups and staff. They've been busy. We've had 2 very productive work groups working throughout the past year. One on ecological restoration and sciences, and then our technical assistance coffee chats. So I know Meredith Comey is going to give the update for the ecosystem work group. And Meredith, are you here?
Yes, I am here. Okay. I have to share my, oh, nope, good. There it is. That's right. I sent it to you guys. So yes, so an update on the Ecological Restoration and Science Work Group. We'll be actually having a meeting tomorrow at noon. I did send out a Zoom, so if people didn't get that and they would like to attend, please send me an email. One of the things that we need to consider is when looking at this subgroup, is it a subgroup or is it going to be, a full work group? The last meeting that we had, our first meeting, we did touch on DEIJ issues that would be relevant to the whole CRC. So if that ends up becoming an end goal of this, which would be completely fine, then we would elevate this group to a full work group, which then, we would have to go through leadership committee approval, operating procedures. So we're still working that out. To move this a little bit. In the meantime, the subgroup can focus on tasks that will specifically amplify restoration projects in underserved communities. One idea that came out of this is making the next issue of Restoration News, our second issue, dedicated to focusing on restoration projects in underserved communities. So we would, look at, and this is something we're going to discuss tomorrow, how many communities do we want to look at, kind of nail that down. But we're thinking of, 4 to 6 communities across the state. So, spanning south to north. It could be a project that's conceptualized, implemented, have an interview with the group that would like to put these projects in, or with primary stakeholders, maybe a comment from a public official. But the goal really, whatever form it ends up taking, is to have it be an avenue for these communities to get the word out about their work and what they need to make this happen. So from that, connections could be made. We could point them in the direction of funding, that kind of thing, but something that would be, useful and that we would follow up on. The other area that we think the DEIJ subgroup could be useful is with CRAP. I think there's going to be, CRAP continues, another round of the database being open and nominations. So really taking a look at how to get these communities projects into the CRAP database. Next slide. I was trying to advance it myself. So the other work group is the Document Hub work group, which is headed up by Josh and Captain Al. So there are some examples in the spreadsheet that they've been working on of what a website having a Document Hub would look like. So that's going to require, funding to hire somebody to do it. Josh has a really excellent database or Google Doc with many tabs, but it's all of his information is kind of nested in there, but people have really been contributing. There's about 45 documents in there now. Hopefully, what will this look like? A coastal resilience library that, that's one idea that's been tossed around. So we're looking at the fall for that. And if Josh is on here and wants to add anything to this, great. Next slide. This is a timeline of, our projects and how we see them rolling out. This is Josh's timeline. So by December, yes, we all went through our computers in a volcano. So we're going to have our meetings actually in June for these two subgroups, looking at through the summer to write the restoration news articles, and for Josh's group to fill out documents and the tags. We'll have another full group meeting in September, and then hopefully we'll by November be getting the restoration news out and this document hub, starting to go. And that is it. If anybody has any questions, reach out to me, Martha, Josh, or Captain Al.
All right, great. Thank you, Meredith. Any, if you have any questions, I know Laura put Meredith's email in the chat in case you wanted to join the meeting tomorrow. please just shoot her an email for the link. And we'll move on now. Our next update is by Vanessa Tropiano, who led our creation and initial set of coffee chats.
Hi, everybody. So over the past year or so, we have been working on developing a coffee chat program for the NJCRC. The goal of the program was to leverage our existing network of professionals to better offer technical assistance and just general connections with local stakeholders, municipalities, communities, etc. The goals specifically of the program are to help communities with their capacity for resilience planning. As Becky Hill mentioned when she was giving her presentation, we know that we don't have the capacity as a state overall to always give the technical assistance that is needed. And so we are hoping that the CRC can at least fill a small bit of that gap to help our local stakeholders. And then the other part of the program was to develop a list of technical assistance that's offered through the CRC that lives on our website. And it's on the CRC website now, it's up and running. Any of our partners who want to be included on that list are welcome to be on there. And so if you aren't yet, we can help you get your organization listed on the website. So over the past year, the coffee chat program was a pilot program. We implemented 4 coffee chats. They were all virtual. We had initially considered having some in-person ones, but COVID has never really ended, unfortunately. And it also is much easier with our partners and our stakeholders being from all over the state to have virtual meetings. So all 4 were virtual. We had them approximately bi-monthly. And each one focused on a different topic that could be of assistance to communities. My involvement with the coffee chats is now over because I changed positions. So I don't know if Laura wants to give an update on where we're going next with it. But basically where I left off is I just made some recommendations for continuing the program in its next phase, ending this sort of pilot phase and changing over to doing the real thing. And we did do a survey or an evaluation after each of the chats to get some feedback on what our participants would like to see. I think that's it for me.
All right, thank you, Vanessa, and thank you for all your help in creating the coffee chat format and facilitating the initial meetings. It's been a great success for us, and wish you best of luck in your new position. So we're on to our staff updates. So I'll give just a brief update on our current activities. Presently, we plan to continue the coffee chats. We have one more scheduled for June, either June 22nd or 23rd. We're still trying to firm up the dates with our speaker, but it'll be on green infrastructure and green infrastructure funding opportunities in New Jersey. So look for a save the date and a link to that meeting shortly. We also are doing 2 contracting activities right now, one with BRS. So BRS has agreed to join us to help us scope out a visioning and strategic planning analysis for the NJCRC. As Tony McDonald mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we have grown both in numbers and we in our, what's the word I'm looking for, the breadth of our membership in terms of their expertise. So the CRC has actually changed pretty significantly in the past year in terms of membership, and we want to take a status check of where we are, what our priorities and visions are, and where we should be headed. So BRS has agreed to help us with that. They'll be conducting a SWOT analysis to determine our strengths and weaknesses and opportunities. Hopefully no threats, but you never know. And out of that assessment, they hope to give us a framework for our organizational structure. Is it appropriate for us right now, or should we change it a little bit? What are our target projects and priorities? and what is a funding plan to strategically achieve those priorities. So we really look forward to working with BRS. And Lee, I know you probably don't think things are moving, but we do have a meeting with our council's office later this week to hopefully get the contract in place shortly. So that's one activity. The other is we're going to bring in Sea Grant more formally to help us with our communications efforts. We're going to be hiring their communications specialist to help us work up our newsletter. We had one newsletter come out, I think it was a year ago, but we really need to have a real communications person help us. And so they've agreed to work with us to help create a more consistent contact between the NJCRC and its partners and other people outside the organization. So they're continuing. Our 22-23 priorities. We've heard Meredith talk about some of the work that the Restoration and Science Work Group has done to identify resources and documents that could help practitioners in ecosystem restoration and adaptation. What we'd like to do, our vision is to take that information and create a searchable document hub that anybody could go to and find by topic or by type of restoration or any kind of keyword, all the resources that they've identified as being valuable to the community and can be accessed through this searchable database. And to do that, we've gotten a proposal from Sparkman Media to work up a web-based searchable document hub. But in that proposal, they've also suggested somewhat of a rebranding of the webpage to make it much more strategically focused on people we would want to reach. And that would be our community members, our membership and partners, as well as others that are interested in resilience opportunities and the technical assistance that they could find through the NJCRC. So that's one of our priorities. And the other is to continue the coffee chats. So we really think they're valuable. We've gotten great feedback from people that have attended those chats. So we are planning for 6 more coffee chats in the coming year. And to do that, we would like to create a coffee chat planning work group. Right now, it's been Vanessa, Laura, and I kind of identifying topics and speakers and connecting with the speakers to come present to our community. But we think it would be better if it was structured in a way that we could have a committee thinking about what is most relevant to our community's needs, who are the right partners to speak to them, and what are the resources that they could bring to the table to help communities. And so that's definitely one of the things we'd like to do. All committees of the NJCRC are approved by the full partners. So up here we have a vote on the establishment of that coffee chat planning work group. I would say rather than ask for all ayes or nays, if anybody is vehemently opposed to the creation of a coffee chat planning work group, please say nay in the chat. We'll count the number of nays we get. But we do think this would help us with the planning and content of the coffee chats moving forward. Seeing no nays yet, if we do approve this, we would absolutely invite anybody that's interested in this effort to join us on the planning committee. And if you want to, just you can put your name in the chat now, or you could send an email to Laura or I, just indicating that you'd like to help with the coffee chat planning. So that's all we had for staff updates. Did I miss anything, Laura?
I'll just add that with the work group, one of the key things that we're also trying to make sure we're doing is that we're following up to see how our communities are using our coffee chats or the information we're providing in our coffee chats and our technical assistance directory. So we definitely could use some assistance in brainstorming best ways for doing that. And that would be one of the, also the purposes of the work group is developing those types of either surveys or other ideas. As I said, we need some assistance in brainstorming ideas. So we hope that we can get at least a few people to participate and really build out this program. I think it's the one thing I would add. I think from here, we just had, we value our partners and we want to make this a platform, these full partnership meetings, one platform where you can share information about the great work that you all are doing individually. And then hopefully, also create interest among other partners to maybe create some collaborative work between us all as well. I sent out a request and a few people answered my call for giving updates on the work that they're doing. We'll start with the first three that are listed here, but if anybody else wants to give an update, just hang on and we can have you give an update on your work as well. We're shooting for that 2 to 3 minute time frame, but we'll let Meredith go first. And if you need to share a slide, just let me know. I will.
Oh no slide, and I'll be quick. So we're gearing up for our season like most everybody is. The one exciting thing is we finally have the executed contract for the NIFWF and NCRF grant to get to work on the final designs and permitting for the nature-based features at Earl. So we'll be starting that. Well, we have started it, but we'll be kicking that off this week with our first meeting. And I wanted to turn my sharing into a joint sharing with Tom for some updates from him with regards to Pallone's, Congressman Pallone, and also NIFWF.
Yeah, thanks. So I don't know how many of the partners know, but last year, congressionally directed spending requests were allowable again for community-based projects. And so Monmouth University and Baykeeper have been working closely with the Naval Weapons Station Earl in Monmouth County on coastal resilience and restoration planning. They actually have a county supported joint land use plan. And I know a number of you were involved in that planning process back in 2019. That plan had identified a number of projects that the county and the communities and the naval station wanted to implement. And most of them are nature-based features to protect coastal communities and facilities of the naval base. And so when Congressman Pallone's staff reached out for any projects that would work with communities, we thought that those types of projects would be perfect, and he agreed. So he was able to get some funding for the weapons station in the last budget, and he has once again put in money in the next fiscal year budget to do restoration projects along the Raritan and Sandy Hook Bayshore. And we're very, very grateful for that because that's going to advance some of these restoration projects. And so right now, fiscal year 22 funding, we're starting to work with the county and Baykeeper and the weapons station to actually identify the projects to move forward. So stay tuned. We'll let you know what happens as we move along. And then the NIFWF funding, actually, I think in the chat, there was an answer that the full proposal requests are going out, I think, today and tomorrow. And we were lucky enough to receive one for a project in Leonardo, which is next to the naval base. So we're really trying to use that plan as a framework to advance the design and implementation of these projects. And I will say, and I know a lot of people on here have done a lot of those planning works, including CRAP that was discussed. They are extremely valuable in presenting a strong case to the funding agencies that you have socialized the ideas with the communities, you've gotten their input, you prioritize these projects, and they become very competitive. So the more we can do that as a community, the better. And I'll just leave it there. Sorry for going over your 3 minutes, Laura.
Thank you, Tom, for tag teaming.
We'll take that from the others category. Tanya, I would love it if you are still here, hopefully, to give us an update for New Jersey Future.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. So the first update is actually a plug for the upcoming New Jersey Planning and Redevelopment Conference that's coming up real soon in June 14th to 16th. The first 2 days are virtual and the last day is in person. And we're partnering again with APA to host the conference. So it'll offer sessions on resilience topics. And then for the first time new this year, it will also offer CEUs for certified floodplain managers. I will grab the link and put that in the chat in a minute. And then in terms of project updates, New Jersey Future is working on a few resilience or projects to develop resilience guidance for municipalities and communities. So the first one is, it's not coastal, but we're working with partners under a contract with the Highlands Council to develop guidance for doing a sustainability and land use master plan element that incorporates a climate change related hazard vulnerability assessment into it. And our partners on that project are Sustainable Jersey and BRS and Land Conservancy of New Jersey. So that project is specific to the Highlands, but it overlaps with another project that's going to provide guidance for communities across the state. So we have funding from the Pew Foundation to work closely with the DP and Sustainable Jersey and others in coordinating sort of resilience guidance development and stakeholders to ultimately develop a model local climate vulnerability assessment and planning process that will serve as model guidance for towns across the state. It's also part of that project that that we look into and give recommendations on how the DP can provide technical assistance for towns to be able to complete that climate vulnerability assessment. So I will be reaching out to you, Laura and Tom, about engaging CRC in that process and how the CRC could potentially, fit into a strategy to provide technical assistance to communities doing the vulnerability assessment and resilience planning. The timeline is that we expect to have like a draft version around the fall for the model vulnerability assessment, and then a more finalized version in the probably early spring or so of the new year. And we don't have it all figured out yet, but we're looking to kind of kick off a stakeholdering process probably by the end of this month or so for that. And that's all I've got.
Thank you so much, Tanya. In the interest of time, I'm going to move right on to Harriet Honingfeld, who I believe is still here to give us an update from Monmouth County.
I am. So I'll cover a few different projects that may be of interest to the group. We are finalizing the draft of what we're calling the next steps to compatibility study. Should be on our June 20th planning board agenda for approval to release to the public. The study advances a toolbox of planning measures that encourage land use compatible with the mission of Naval Weapons Station Earl. We're focused mainly on the 5 municipalities adjacent to the base, but the lessons can be applied elsewhere. So hopefully at the end of the month, we'll have the report on our website and available to distribute to those that might be interested. The Bayshore Coastal Resilience Design Study is a follow-up from the study that Tom mentioned a few minutes ago. We are doing further design and concept planning for 2 coastal resilience projects, one on Whale Creek in Aberdeen, one on Flat Creek in Union Beach. And earlier in May, we held a technical advisory committee to review the preliminary draft of the concepts. And also we held a pre-application meeting with the NJDEP. And the concept plans are a little more detailed than what we called the JLUS2 study, and also reflective of newly collected data. Our consultants had monitoring equipment out at the two sites for a number of months within the last year. And finally, we are advancing our first project through the REPI Land Preservation Grant that Monmouth Conservation Foundation and Monmouth County have. We're working with the Navy and getting closer on purchasing our first conservation/agricultural easement. Our first project is expected to be a parcel in Howell Township that is adjacent to the base. We've already completed the appraisal work, the survey work. We have a draft deed of easement, and we've done the title work. So we're inching closer to closing. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Harriet. I did put a quick request into the chat to see if anybody else wanted to give an update. I don't see any takers. If you want to come off mute and interrupt me, go for it. Otherwise, I will say thank you to Meredith and Tanya and Harriet and Tom for giving updates on your work. And I'll pass it back to Tom to wrap it all up.
I think we finished right on time. That's amazing. So thank you all for participating in the meeting. Hope you found it informational and productive. And if you ever have anything you want to discuss with Laura or I, please shoot us an email. We'd be happy to talk to you about anything, new work groups, new work plans. And as we begin our strategic planning analysis, look for an email from BRS inviting you to participate in a survey. We really want your feedback. So we'll let you know when that's happening. All right. Thank you all for joining. Have a great summer.
Thanks, everyone.